Well, that was an interesting way to go at it for a new MCU Disney Plus show. Moon Knight tells the story of Stephen Grant and his mercenary Marc Spector as they investigate the mysteries of the Egyptian gods from inside the same body. This is going to be a pretty vague review for Moon Knight. I'm not going to go too deep into spoilers. This is going to be a pretty vague show because this show was pretty vague. Because this is one of the weirdest shows Disney Plus has done, and this is, for me, the second weakest show of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is not a bad show at all. This ain't a bad show at all. I ultimately do enjoy a lot of what the show has to come into. So let's talk about Moon Knight. This is the sixth TV series in the MCU, sixth show in the Disney Plus era of MCU, sharing continuity with the films, and this stars Oscar Isaac, Calamawy, and Ethan Hawke. And when it comes to Moon Knight, this was a show I was actually pretty optimistic in. From the trailers, it looked different. It looked like it was going in a new direction. We were going to get a fantasy element / psychological horror aspect to it, superhero world. And we haven't had that one property in the MCU that is horror until Multiverse of Madness, which this is, now we have two. And so far, when it comes to this phase, I've been enjoying what Phase 4 has been doing. They've been more experimenting with ideas, but I went into the show with an optimistic mindset. This was a character that was very different from any of the MCU characters. I like Oscar Isaac, I like Ethan Hawke. I was intrigued on what they were going to do, but I was also pretty skeptical because I feel like this was going to be another one of those cases where it feels like it's all over the place. And this was a character I don't really have that much familiarization with, so I still went in there with some optimism. And ultimately, when it comes to Moon Knight, here's what I can say. I like the show and I hate some of this show. So yeah, I'm on two different sides of the spectrum. I both love the show and I don't like the show. And that's pretty complicated for me to say. For me clamoring for something different with the MCU, I was mostly satisfied. It does tell the story of a globe-trotting treasure hunt, as well as a deeply personal story about a man who's struggling with dissociative identity disorder. And movies like Joker and such has done this kind of better to a certain extent. But that's one of my first positives, is I appreciate the effort. I appreciate the fact that Marvel, they wanted to try something different. And this is what I love about DC and Marvel. Even if it doesn't always work. Like, I was not a fan of the Eternals whatsoever. I didn't hate it by any means necessary. I was just really frustrated with it. I was a bit frustrated with Ragnarok at the time, but I'm not so much anymore. And with the DCU, I did used to love Suicide Squad 2016 when it came out, but now, in retrospect, I find that to be a little frustrating film at the least. Same with the 2017 cut of Justice League. But I can always respect the fact when they want to branch out from something different, DC or Marvel. And Marvel, they are usually can be a little bit corporate mandate, because as much as I'm a fan of them, they do get a little corporate mandate. They do have to have the usual MCU rules. So it was nice of them to break away from not having the rules. One thing I very much like, it does have the trappings of an MCU Disney Plus show, but I definitely love the tone of the horror, psychological fantasy, supernatural elements of it. And that's one of the things I very much appreciated about it. And it felt like its own thing throughout. It had the psychological and adventurous tone. And I love the fact that there's not a whole lot of establishing its place in this universe, because it allows this show to exist in the MCU in its own merit, and that's the thing I appreciate about it. It's also one of the few things I complimented Eternals on, even though I did feel like you should use a little bit of that MCU spark. But I always love when you have something in the MCU that isn't concerned with establishing its place, and because most of the time they do have to do this, and that's how the game rolls. You can't really change up the formula too much, otherwise you're alienating your audience. But I definitely did appreciate that side of the tone. Another thing I also really do appreciate is the performances. Oscar Isaac is great here. He gives a fantastic performance. I think Oscar Isaac is a very good actor, especially in stuff like scenes from A Marriage with him and Jessica Chastain, which was a great miniseries. I really loved him in Dune Part 1. The guy is a great actor. I know he did X-Men Apocalypse. Even he wasn't satisfied with how they treated him as Apocalypse. But the task that he has to play so many different personalities is a very hard challenge in itself. But with the way it's portrayed, I think he does it in the way he can. You have the American accent with Marc Spector, then you have Stephen Grant with the British accent. It's just both of these personalities. It's kind of like Marvel's answer to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And that's the thing I love about it. But what if Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was an adventurer? And I love that. That was actually really good, and I think he did fantastically well. May Calamawy was a big standout as Layla. She is really cool. I like her character. I like some of the stuff they give with her. She is one of the most fierce and strong female characters in this MCU to date. Those two are really the bread and butter of the performances, as well as Ethan Hawke. I think Ethan Hawke does a very good job in his role, as well as the villain, Arthur Harrow. He is wanting to exact justice on people based on judgment and future crimes, and he was great. I thought he was very good, and he took a lot of influences for it, and he was awesome in this role. I will get into the writing for him in a minute, but I think his performance was also really good. I also really like F. Murray Abraham and Karim El Hakim as Khonshu, the moon god of Egypt. I also liked a lot of the rest of the cast, like the late Gaspard Ulliel. They don't do a whole lot with him as Anton Mogart. I think the plan was that we're gonna have more with him, but since he passed away tragically in a ski accident earlier this year, they couldn't do that with him. But all the rest of the performances of the cast around is very good. It is, and for the 6 episodes, I was intrigued with a lot of things this was set up to do, which is another one of my positives. I love the intriguing aspects to this. They definitely go for it in a lot of what they're going to do. And I like the darker tone here. Like I said, I will give that. A lot of these episodes, I was intrigued with a lot of things. The locations are very well done. I love the locations and the creativity involved here, and they have a lot of creative ambitiousness here. I like that. I like the way they want to do it, and a lot of the production sets in this movie are very well done. You can tell they want to be as accurate to Egypt as possible, and I really like that. There is some effects here, and I love the costume, Egyptian style costumes here, but Moon Knight's costume looks straight how it does off the page. I definitely do love that. It's armor and bandages, and Mr. Knight looks really good, and I like the title sequence. It's very creative and very cool. And from the locations as well as the special effects, the money is on screen, and I very much enjoy a lot of what this tried to do, and the effects look really great. For a 150 million, 200 million, I guess they better look like something. And the score is awesome. I love the score, and there is a very nice song that they play in the hero with Without Love. That is a great song. And I like how some of the questions and some of the things they choose to do definitely does go into what this movie series on Disney Plus, miniseries, as I say, goes for it, and I very much appreciated that. And the action scenes where there's not a whole lot of action, I appreciated the action when we do got it. And I also appreciated the character stuff, which is also really creative. And some of the things they do with Layla, which they gave her more of a Marion Ravenwood type of love interest, while also letting her be into her own. And I definitely did appreciate what they were trying to do with that. And there is some lot of tension and some excitement throughout the show when it comes to the score. So a lot of those things I can definitely admire, with some of the interesting ideas and some of the concepts that they play along with. Now, getting into the things I hate about the show is, I will say, the pacing of this show for most of these episodes is really, really slow. And I'm not someone who is against a slow-paced character study. In fact, that's what I love. I love the fact that they want it to be more of a slow-paced character study. But my problem when it comes to some of the pacing here, it does take a while for a lot of things to get going. It does take for a lot of things and certain elements to be revealed. And I think in that of itself, I think could have been a little bit better. I felt like they don't really quite stick the landing in this pacing, because most of these episodes are 44 to 53 minutes long, and some stuff feels a little bit draggy in a lot of parts where there's not a lot of action. And there is also a little bit of moments where Oscar Isaac's character, I get it, he's scared, he's terrified, but there are moments where you do get a little bit moments with the cinematography where it feels like you're just, where it's a little way too kooky and crazy, and it gets to a point where you can only take so much that it does get a little irritating at points. But again, like I said, I appreciated what you're trying to do. I just felt like some of the kookiness and the craziness got a little bit too out of hand in a lot of places. In terms of its cinematography, was not knowing what's going on. Also, like I said, there could have been a little bit more action in a few of these episodes. Now, for the action we do get, it is brutal, it is violent. They did not hold back. When Kevin Feige says the violence is there, the violence is there. And this felt like a PG-13, as close to a rated R show. But I just felt like there could have been a little bit more of that action. Also, I will definitely go on a limb here and say that some of the writing here could have been used a little bit, maybe 4 more episodes, because there are some things in this story, in this show, and in some things and elements they try to bring in that it doesn't really feel justified for 6 episodes. I feel like they should have had this at least. This is the problem I do and will acknowledge for some of these things. Like, some of these MCU properties should be best for movies, and some of them should have be better left off for a TV show or a miniseries or a movie on Disney Plus. But if you're going to go this route where you have 6 episodes, you have to try and make the pacing of these shows a little bit longer for some of these ideas and themes. And I feel like if you had 10 episodes instead of the usual 6, I feel like you really could have packed a punch. You needed 10 episodes to fully flesh out a lot of these things. And speaking of villains, even though I love Ethan Hawke as the villain, I felt like the way his villain is written, the material that he was given wasn't very satisfying. I felt he's doing a great job, and when he hits, but I feel like you needed a little bit more of him and a little bit more direction and development for him to make it fully stand out. And I will say it should have hit a little bit harder than it should have. Not that I'm complaining, I just feel like some of it needed to be done a little bit better. And my big overarching negative when it comes to this is one thing that's easily going to get me in trouble. Because as much as I praise this for being a different tone and such, I feel like you could have a little bit more comedic side of it. Now, I'm not saying make everything all jokey and such, but there are quite a few episodes here I'll go up and down on, because there's a lot of things that are so great. It's great in the, on one end, it is a fantastic character building show, exploring the broken character with trauma and the complicated ways of dealing with the pain, which that was my favorite episode, episode 5. And you have great performances, and it's very experimental, and it leads more on psychological, supernatural horror and mind manipulation, and tells a story, and it subverts expectations to flip the story and character on its head, and some great mythology and stuff you getting, and some fun characters along the way. But on the other side of things, there is some moments here compared to WandaVision. When it gets to the finale, it feels incredibly underwhelming, and it doesn't feel 100% satisfying because it's just in abrupt. And I do feel like it feels a little rushed. Just like I said, it makes it more frustration, and there is some more questions I still have, which makes it a little bit more frustrating in the negative side with the show, because there's a lot more questions I still have that we still need to be answered. Granted, they said this is a mini-series for now, so we're not going to get season 2, but if they could do a movie sequel to this in a way where you could bring out more of those questions in it, I do feel like when you get to the final episode, like I said, you need at least 4 extra episodes, or at least 1 more extra episode to fully wrap up this series. So all in all, I think Moon Knight is a solid enough addition to the MCU. When it comes to this show, I both like it and hate it. I like it for being different and the performances and what it was trying to do and being super experimental, but I hate a lot of the writing in some spots, and I don't like some of the overly kooky stuff that gets a little bit too crazy. And it does take itself a little bit too overly out of the realm of possibility in terms of supernatural horror. This is not a bad show. I ranked this as number 3, so it is better than Hawkeye, even though I also think that's a good show too, but frustrating. But I can overall say that Moon Knight is a pretty interesting experiment for this phase for the MCU. It is the second or third frustrator, but I can easily sit here and say I did enjoy most of it, if not all of it. So this is going to be a tough one to recommend, because I think if you are an MCU fan and if you want something different, you'll get that here. But if you are someone who has not enjoyed phase 4, and like I said, if you are someone who likes your usual MCU tradition, you're not going to find it here. So know who you are going into this, and I think you will enjoy it. So for this show, I'm not going to give it a grade because I don't know what to grade it. All I can say is that if we do see this character again in a movie or season 2, I do feel like they need to course correct and improve on some of the flaws this has. And I think if you do that with a future season 2 or a movie, I think you can really win people over with this character. Well, that's going to do it for the video that you just watched. I will have my channel here, so you would like to see anything here, click the channel icon, subscribe for more. I will also leave a video and maybe a playlist here, so in case you want to see what I'm about. As always, stay Epictasticness, join the Epictasticness, and you guys keep it cool.